Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. Today, I'm delighted to be here with Brian Degnan and the Oracle, as we call him, Brian. It's Jim Orr. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. It's Friday afternoon. Not sure how we're going to fill out an hour. We're going to have to pad it out, guys. I kind of thought it would be like this, but I didn't quite know the extent of the carnage and the chaos that we were going to be experiencing at the AGM. And quite frankly, Jim, I've never seen or heard anything quite like it. We'll start off with the AGM. A remarkable turnout, I've got to say. Obviously, the Trust and the Collective have been doing their work on, I would say, maybe even just educating shareholders who might never have been at an AGM to go along, make their voice heard. I'm guessing that you've heard what actually went down at the AGM, Jim. What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I've come back in half an hour ago, still throwing out, but yeah, spent the last half hour catching up with social media and everything that's been happening. Remarkable stuff. I mean, I was at the Collective meeting last week, standing in for yourself, because you obviously I was just thought of somebody there. Kevin,
just say it.
No, I was kind of there's a comment from Kevin Thelwell, is that who he pronounces the guy's name, about his son. He said he's 25-8. I'm thinking, what does that mean? And obviously, it's an extension of 24/7. Is that a thing?
Oh wow,
25-8. Anyway,
that's 110% effort. It makes no sense.
Oh, one of them. I thought 25 years and 8 months old. I thought when he was talking like that.
They said 25. I mean, the reason I'm saying that is you work 24/7. You're a busy man. You can't attend to all these things. So anyway, I wandered along last week, and there was a number of things we were planning to do this morning to convey just how frustrated the fans are. And one of the things we wanted more time to ask questions at the end. And what they said they were going to do was what tends to happen at the AGM is they show these videos to show how good we are. And what they said was that we don't want that. We're going to stop that. And I'm thinking, who's going to do that? So catching up with the socials, the bold Jeanette Finlay, who obviously divides opinion amongst the Celtic fans, but to have the kind of testicular fortitude to go up and say, no, stop this, I don't want it, because we want to ask questions. It's quite remarkable. And also they talk about red cards and booing them on and stuff like that. And I think that's all fair and good. And looking at the videos, that seems to be what they've done. But the thing is, for me, the board must have known how challenging today's meeting was going to be. They must have known that. And basically, from what I can see, they failed to effectively manage that. They knew it would be challenging. So for me, they failed again. You can add that to the long list of failures that they've got to sort of manage a meeting, and then rather than face the shareholders down, they seem to just walk away. They can't be allowed to hide.
No.
They have to face up to the concerns that the majority of shareholders have. And you've seen meetings, not Celtic meetings, but meetings of large organisations where shareholders turn up and they're going absolutely ballistic and it's chaos and it's carnage. That was people just shouting them all, and then they should be able to manage that, and they couldn't do that. And I just think they're out of their depth. And you talked about the point you were part of the Collective meeting that went to see Michael Nicholson and a few other people, and you said within 5 minutes you reckoned they were out of depth here. So that was a meeting that should have been managed better. I think fans are entitled to say, we don't want to see these videos, we want to ask questions. I think they're quite entitled to put red cards up. They're quite entitled to boo. They can't go over the score. They can't, but I think that's perfectly legit for me. And I think they should have known that's what was going to happen, and they should have known what to expect. And I just saw the 5-minute video of Dermot Desmond's son there. Read the room. For goodness sake, read the room.
I know.
Just come in and say, we know you're not happy, guys. I know you've got lots of questions to ask. Let's just whiz through this as quick as we can. You get your questions at the end, and let's go for it. But all this stuff about, delusional is the word. And what do you expect? You've got a room full of Celtic fans unhappy. They're booing you. They're showing you red cards, and you read out a statement that's only going to antagonise people. I really don't get it. I really don't get how people can actually do that. How they thought, hey, no, you know what? This is a good idea. Let's read this statement to say, how are we so good? My dad bought the club and saved all you guys, and all you guys, what you want to undermine us? For me, that's pretty confrontational.
It's
and as I said, I think a halfway intelligent, sensible person would have done that at the start. Take the booze, take the catcall, take the red cards, and just try and diffuse the situation. We know you're angry, guys. We want to get through the meeting. We're all here for Celtic, and the best for Celtic. We've got a few things to do first, and then you'll have plenty of time to ask your questions, because they would have known that would have happened. You know, that meeting at the collective was last Tuesday. Somebody would have get back to Celtic and said, these guys are planning to do A, B, and C. You guys need to manage that. Did they manage it? No, they didn't.
The thing is, Jim, even if there, and this is the thing, I'm not suggesting for a minute there's a leak, but even if, you know, word spreads, you've got a video there, everybody's seen it, of an AGM that's not allowed to be videoed. So it gets out. The word gets out. And the word, like you say, could have got back to Celtic. There might be a little inkling of disruption here, but you're right. They were unprepared for it. Now, I'm going to come to you. Brian forgot his red card, so he wore a red fleece instead. So fair play to you, Brian. But if someone has tuned into Acsom for the first time in 6 months because they've been on an Antarctic expedition, right, and they don't know what's been happening in the last 6 months, give us a wee rundown, Brian, because it is unbelievable what the club's been through off the park in relation. And this is the thing. I was down in Leeds. I'll be talking about that later on in the show last night. See, when you talk about people who are outside the Celtic or the Scottish football bubble, they cannot understand why Celtic fans are unhappy. They just can't understand it, Brian, because it's so nuanced, isn't it? It's not about success and medals on the table and all this kind of stuff. It's everything else. So what have we got at the moment? We've got a club who has failed to prepare for the Champions League. 7 out of 9 times we have failed to get through qualifiers. You know, you could go right back to 2014 and Maribor and count the managers and the issues that each manager has had with transfer issues. So it's not just one guy. They've obviously tried to place it all on Brendan. It's a number of managers over a period of time. It's in terms of the expectations of the fans changing, the shifting change of expectation from chasing Rangers when Fergus comes in, to matching Rangers, to overtaking Rangers, to then saying, right, what else is there after the 10 in a row broke down? Because it's not another 9. That is not our vision. That'll come if you've got higher vision. You'll win all the leagues. You will, if you prepare for Europe. So the lack of engagement, Brian, the treatment of fans, the treatment of fan groups, the statement, which one I hear you say, the original one that didn't land with a few Celtic fans. Come on, so far removed from the season ticket holder, the fan on the street, so far removed from it. And you get right up to this point and we've sacked a manager. Not only that, we've come out with, and I'm saying we've sacked him. I know that maybe officially he resigned, but that's just a line that football clubs put out there. Brendan Rodgers did not go into that Monday meeting with any intention of resigning from the position as Celtic manager. He went in to discuss the plans for January, Brian, and that's a fact. Transfer window after transfer window where we're not doing the business properly. And then Dermot Desmond takes a flamethrower to Brendan Rodgers. He takes a flamethrower to them. The Green Brigade get banned. You know, the police are set, the wolves are set on the Green Brigade, and then the AGM comes up. We're still managerless, right? So Jim's absolutely spot on. There was an inkling of a chance that the fans might have been unhappy today, Brian, and we weren't prepared for it as a football club.
No, I think if you were to look back in my time in Acsom, I think the two words I've said most are strategy and communication. Strategy from the park and communication off it. And this is an example today of the most inept, idiotic communication style I've seen from a corporate entity possibly ever. For them to, I mean, if you were to sum up today, it's when Peter Law told the fans to behave. He told a group of grown men and women, shareholders, hardworking people, to behave because a billionaire's son wanted to speak. If there's anything that sums up Celtic Football Club in its current state and why the fans are unhappy, it's that level of arrogance and dismissiveness from a group of hardworking people who love Celtic Football Club. Now, playing devil's advocate for a second, right? Say the board genuinely felt they'd done everything right. What they may have decided to do was show robust leadership and say, look, this is our plan. This is what we're doing. We get it's not popular, but this is the layout. See if they'd have done that. You could go, no happy, but I see you've got a plan. I see there's a vision. I see there's something. You've wasted the respect to come out there knowing you're going to get booed, show a bit of contrition, accept the fans' views, but say, look, we get your views. This is the direction of travel. We know it might not be up every state, but this is where we're going. This is where we see the club going. We think it's for the best. Please give us time and trust us. But they didn't even have the common courtesy or common sense to do even as little as that. It's embarrassing. Now, on the Green Brigade stuff, irrespective of whether you love the Green Brigade or hate them, the fact is the optics of how the club have dealt with this issue and these issues coming up is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Because what it looks like, even if, and I don't believe this for a second, but even if the club are genuinely thinking they're doing the right thing and they genuinely believe the Green Brigade were out of order and they genuinely believe that they're having to mitigate it and they genuinely believe the best course of action was to ban them, the optics of that are, it looks like you're having an attack because of protesting.
Mm-hmm.
So find a way to deal with that that's sensible, that you communicate the strategy and it comes through. They're either so blind or so arrogant they can't see the very basics. It's maddening. And I've said a number of times, I don't think actually Celtic fans are entitled to success. It's a nonsense. We're entitled to seeing the club ran well and doing things the right way and trying to progress. There's no harm in losing a fight, right? There's no harm in getting beat, but there's plenty of harm in no fighting at all. And me going into these situations so underprepared, so risk-averse, so cowardly in an approach, which is exemplified by the disgusting manner in which Peter Lawwell and Ross Desmond basically dealt with the supporters today. It's baffling. And if anyone thinks it's Celtic fans are not happy because they've not won the Champions League, you're not listening. You're not paying attention. Just watch that 5-minute video and understand and show it to your boss. If you work for a company, show it to your boss and say, how would you deal with your customer base? Would you do this? The answer is no. No corporate entity would, no CEO worth their salt. And by the way, there was no attempt for Michael Nicholson. He calmed the crowd or say, Peter, don't worry, you're just the chairman. Let me handle this since I'm the CEO. He sat in his wee hands looking mousy and scared to speak because his dad gave him permission to. It's an absolute shambles situation. And I think they deserve every ounce of criticism we're going to get.
Brian, we're in a situation. Sorry,
Jim, I'm Jim, yeah. How do we chuckle that Brian said, if that's not a brilliant line for a T-shirt, behave the billionaire's boy wants to speak.
That's so true, though.
That's the T-shirt, Brian. Behave the billionaire's boy wants to speak. But no, I was going to ask you a question, Paul, actually.
Yes.
Having seen what's happened this morning, and you were at the meeting, the collective meeting, where you saw the whites of the eyes of some of these guys that make these decisions. Do you think it's intentional what they do, or do you think it's incompetence what they do when they put these statements out? Yeah.
Well, it's a very good point, right? And I think there is a distinction here, Jim, because I'm going to go back to the original statement. The original statement that basically just threw a firework into the flames, it was just unbelievable. Because what they said that night was that they had spoken to Celtic fans, and the Celtic fans they had spoken to thought the statement was all right. Everybody in the room, who were obviously representing a wider fan base, every single person in the room said, no, it didn't. And their response to that, probably there was a shrug in there somewhere, was that it didn't land with some, Jim. So, in answer to your question, are they blissfully unaware of their failings? Partly, yeah. The incompetence comes into it because we've got a lawyer upholding the role of CEO. He's completely over promoted. He's way in above his, he's, when you look at the position of a CEO and the CEOs that we've had, our first ever CEO, if you want to go back to titles, etc., Fergus McCann was a CEO, right? He ran the football club as a CEO. Terry Cassidy was a CEO of Celtic Football Club before him. We've had people like Alan McDonald in that position as well, Jim, before Peter Lawwell comes to the party. Now, Peter Lawwell, in his pomp, could hold a room, right? Could hold court, had the charisma, the strength, the presence. He did. But Peter Lawwell's past that, I'm afraid, in terms of his career. And he's not a CEO in any case. The person we've got in charge at the moment in that position, and I speak to people who are close to the club who agree with me, he's promoted way above his ability. He's in the wrong job. He's in the wrong movie, right? And unfortunately, there's an arrogance at Celtic whereby instead of putting that right and doing something about it, they're digging their heels in, and it's just getting worse. It's just getting worse. They're burying their heads in the sand. I know you don't like your cliches, Jim, but I'm using them all.
Oh, love them, love them. Go. Square peg, round hole.
It's coming. It's coming.
Yeah.
So when you then get to a situation where everything I described to Brian, who's been on an Antarctic expedition for the last 6 months, you get to that point. You need somebody to absolutely command that room today. You need the charisma. A bit of, listen, arrogance if used well, a bit of ego if used well. Because if you're arrogant enough to think, well, I can handle this, it's fine, I'll deal with this, then, or confident, self-belief, I don't see any of that. I don't see any of it. And if you adjourn it because you can't handle, right, the working man who's paying your wages, guys, right, the working man who's paying your CEO the best part of 900 grand, if you can't handle them giving you a bit of heat, then you're in the wrong job and you're at the wrong football club. You're actually at the wrong football club. I mean, imagine saying that we're bullies. Imagine saying Celtic fans are bullying the billionaire's son or the billionaire. Wow. How could that even... I mean, I'm going to come right back to this. I was getting the live updates. I drove up from Leeds this morning, right? And I'm getting the live updates driving up. And I'm thinking to myself, how do Celtic pull this back? Because I'm like, to a fault, an optimist. I believe that any scenario can be resolved, right? You go into it, you think, I can sort this. I can sort this mess out. And if I'm at Celtic, I'm thinking, how do I sort it out? The first thing, and I'm going to throw it to you first, Jim, Dermot Desmond should be there today. Dermot Desmond should walk into that room today, right? And be there. Don't get your laddie to read out a statement. And I think if you want to sort this out, prove it and actually be in the room. Jim, and people will shake their head and say, no chance. Why no chance? You want to walk around golf courses all over the globe saying that you own Celtic, right? So let's see it. Let's see you in the room.
100%. The thing is, for me, this was all about people were angry. So the first thing you do is try and diffuse the anger, because, obviously people are very passionate about Celtic. But if you diffuse the anger straight away, and you talked about, a lawyer becoming a CEO, etc. This isn't about being a CEO. This is about being halfway intelligent. That the ordinary person with a bit of common sense, what would you, ordinary person who's not a qualified lawyer, what would you in this situation diffuse the anger? Like, because there's all this anger about come in, show a bit of humility, show a bit of humanity, that you're a human person. Look, I'm a big Celtic fan. I've got my scarf on, whatever. We all know what's best for Celtic. We've made some mistakes, but today we've got a chance to have a chat about this, guys, in a kind of good and a kind of civil manner. Take your seats, let's go. And if you're not happy with things, there's the mic and you can talk to us. And we're all pals together. Whereas what we've got just now is just us and them and loads of anger, and both sides are going to dig their heels in. And that'll make it worse. Rather than coming together and trying to do some sort of conciliatory moves, I don't see that happening. And that walking out was just, for me, that was just a silly thing to do. And it needed some, as you said, a strong personality to take a grip of that meeting right at the very start. When you see the red cards and the booing, let that subside. Okay, guys, we know you're not happy. But what we're going to do today is we're going to have a good, frank discussion about Celtic. And you know what? If this goes on to 3 o'clock this afternoon, not a problem. We'll be here to answer all your questions. Yeah. And Peter Law says it's going to finish at 12:30 no matter what. Straight away, you're antagonising.
It's because he wants to tune into Acsom, Jim.
Of course, he knew I was on. So, I mean, why would you do that?
I know.
Because that just antagonises. It's like I'm teaching you a lesson. Behave the billionaire's boy speaking. I'm going to teach you a lesson. See if you shout and ball, we're going to stop at 12:30, and you'll suffer for that. Rather than say, you know what, we're all Celtic fans together. We all want what's the best for Celtic. You're unhappy about stuff. We understand that. And we'll spend as much time as possible today going over all this stuff. And hopefully we'll leave at the end of the day all pals together. You may not agree with us. We may agree with you. But we all want the same thing. Diffuse the anger. We're all pals together. We're all wearing the same colours. We all want the same thing. And all we've got today is an explosive AGM. There's never been anything like that at all. It's going to divide opinion. Lots of people are going to be for the board because they'll be thinking, what these guys all shouting and bawling. A lot of people will be with the shareholders there who said they're quite right to do that. And all we've done is create more division. And at the same time, and I'm sure we'll talk about football at some point in time, we've had a terrible transfer window, injuries are all over the place, we've got a manager, the season could implode quite easily. This doesn't help.
Death by 1,000 cuts, I think you said a few times.
Wise man once said that.
A wise man once said.
During the COVID season, yep, that was it.
We managed somehow nefariously to get our hands on some archive footage of the 1990s, the early 90s rallies. Now, at these rallies, I mean, you imagine the tension of looking at your football club and thinking, by the way, we're on the brink here because of the mismanagement and the incompetence of an old board who are way out of their depth. And on the second occasion, now these are all on the Acsom channel on YouTube, go and check it out. On the second of these videos, Terry Cassidy, just to be fair to him, Jim, he steps up.
Yes.
He takes the anger from the crowd. And can I also say, and I'm not blowing smoke up your backside, it was a better managed meeting, Jim, that you helped put together back in the early 90s than that spectacle that we've seen today. But Jim, at least he stepped up. He was a very divisive figure. In fact, you couldn't even call him Marmite because some people like Marmite, and he stood there and he took all the flack and he stayed to the very end.
I think what was good about him, I mean, he was a bit of a pantomime villain, and you admired him for coming along, getting into that Lions Day, and because there was no Lions there, as Stephen Gerrard would say. And he was dead honest. And that's what I liked about him. And he came out with statements like, since he joined the club, every aspect of the club that he's looked at needs work done to it. Mm-hmm. It needs work done. This needs work done, and that needs work done. And we're going to have a really difficult 2 years. And he was just dead honest. And he wasn't blowing smoke up anyone's backside to say, look, this is the reality of this, and we're doing the best that we can. And I don't doubt that the Celtic board are doing the best they can, but do we think it's good enough? I don't think so. The evidence is there, because I mean, it's like you, I'm a eternal optimist, but I tend to try and simplify things and try and not to look for excuses. If you're meant to do something and you don't do it, then you haven't done it. If I ask, can you get me a Mars bar? And you say, well, the shot was shot. Well, why did you put another shot? And that's what I get from the Celtic board. It's like, well, we couldn't get these transfers over the line. We couldn't do that. Well, other clubs are doing that. You've just not done it. Don't care about excuses. You were tasked with this to do, and you haven't done it. You didn't get players in at the start of the transfer window to give us a better chance to qualify for Europe. Okay, you can blame the players, you can blame the manager, but that's what you were tasked to do. That was the job in town. Get the squad, make it better than it was before. What was Peter Law, Fraser all said, to go into the transfer, after the transfer window, to have a better squad than we had before. We didn't do that. You failed to do that. So there's all these failures that they do. And I think for a lot of fans, enough is enough. And I think what today will do is actually reignite the anger. Because what I said, I think last time I was on, was the anger was starting to dissipate, I think. And for any campaign to start, there must be a level of anger. And what started the Celtic Collective was a combination of the Champions League exit and a poor transfer window. So the anger level was up at 100. Then Dundee followed that, Hearts followed that, anger at 100. Day something. Then Martin Hill comes in. Oh, Martin's back, win a few games, win the Glasgow Derby. Well, things aren't that bad, are they? And the anger started to dissipate. After this morning, it's back up to 100.
This is a great point, and I'm going to come to you with this, Brian, because you're spot on with that, Jim, with regards to the anger levels, if you look at that on the Richter scale, right? And you have said this before, and I'm going to go back to it because we've never seen this harmony like it since the early 90s, I would suggest, right? Sometimes a run-off form, Brian, takes a lot of people's eye off the ball. And I think in the last week, maybe there was a sense of that, you know what, even if you appoint a manager, that takes it even further away from the kind of anger levels, Brian. They didn't manage to get the deal over the line, of course, to the point that and I think it's human nature to be guilty of that, right? And it's just part and parcel of being a football fan. On Monday, if you watch Monday's show with Quinny and Kev Graham, it was so positive. Acsom on Monday talking about Nonce, who is obviously an unfashionable, maybe a left field appointment, Brian. But you start as a football fan, being the ever optimist, saying, how could this work? How could we make this work? This might not be as bad as we think it is. And then, as Jim says, they've just thrown a grenade right at this again. And the fury, I think, it's probably at its highest level now, Brian, in this particular run.
Yes, it certainly feels like if there was a glimmer of hope of some sort of reconciliation, that's it. I don't see how. I mean, look, in theory, there's always a way back, right? Because the reality is, most time aren't going anywhere, no matter how many protests are put in place. So there will be at some point a dampening of emotions. But one of the fundamental things that I can never quite, I don't think it's spoken about enough. When you look at today, what today showed was that they think it's their club and we're just the punters. Our club, they're just the custodians that are supposed to run it well. Everybody in that room that's a shareholder, they've got a duty to them to say, this is how we are trusted to run your club. This is the job we are doing and why. I saw someone in the chat, and I think it was a very positive comment, someone digging them up, but they mentioned about, Ross Desmond's going to be the next owner. We don't have a current owner. David Desmond thinks he runs the club. He doesn't run the club. He's a shareholder.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that when he made that statement about Rodgers, and I'm not Rodgers' biggest fan, as everybody that watches us knows, but the fact that a shareholder was able to use the club's public forum to criticise a member of staff so publicly and venomously and cowardly, by the way, because if Rodgers wanted to sue, they had to have sued Celtic, no Desmond, because it was through the official channel. That should have illustrated to everybody, this isn't right. This corporate governance isn't right. This isn't run properly by any metric. So regardless of whether you think they're doing a good job on the park or not, or you guys are one of those people that say, shut up, let them talk, or you want to be reasonable, or you think that it's all the Green Brigade's fault, whatever you think, there's fundamental things that aren't right. And even today, that it was like a group of owners saying, this is your thing. If you're not happy, just go and support another club. No. It's our club. Everybody in there that's worked hard, whether they own a half a penny share or 10,000 shares or whatever they own, it doesn't matter. Celtic's been consistent in their lives, their grandparents' lives, their great-grandparents' lives. They give everything in that club, and they deserve a bit of respect. And that kind of goes back to my point at the start as well. See, if I didn't like their plan, I'd at least respect them for having one. I could say, do you know what? I disagree, but fair play for coming out, standing up, taking criticism, laying out the plan and moving forward. But they couldn't even do that. You can dislike people, dislike comes and goes, respect lasts. If you can't respect somebody, then I don't see how you can ever trust them or how you can ever go forward in their best interests. And clearly, this makeshift Jobs for the Boys board do not respect their fan base at all. And I say it can't be stated enough. It's not their club. It's not owned. It's not an exclusive thing that we're lucky to be part of. Or certainly the shareholders that made that trip there are invested their money in there. And I think it's very clear that they should understand that. So again, when people look and they go, oh, it's the Green Brigade's fault, or it's the fans' fault, or it's the board. No. Let's just look at it objectively and look at how this club's supposed to be run and the structure of it. And let's get language right when we're talking about ownership, because they don't own anything.
This is the thing. I think a few weeks ago when it came to that, it got to the point, Brian, where people might think you're being, I don't know, a little bit petty when we talk about it. I think it's an important point to point out and say, listen, 34.7% may make you a dominant shareholder. It may give you control within that football club because no one else will step up to you. But when you have an AGM, this isn't just a get-together. It's not a fan media event. It's not a fan event. This is a shareholders meeting. It's an annual shareholders meeting.
And that's my point, Paul, is the fact that that's not how they were treated.
No.
To tell them, and I know I made a joke earlier on, but to tell them to behave, show a bit of respect, hold on, wind your neck in. Now, I could be fairly calm in these situations, and I would always try and be respectful, and I try and, speak almost kind of corporate talk and try and get a resolution, always trying for the best interest. But if I'd have been there, I'd have lost a rag at that, because it was disrespectful in the extreme to shareholders, not just your average punter, who should get the respect anyway. But even at a corporate level, they should be distinguishing, Desmond's the largest amount of shares, he's the best one. Every shareholder should be treated equally and respectfully and fairly if they were governed properly. but they're not.
And then you bring in the culture as well. Jim used to laugh at me. I always used the word culture during the COVID season, how a company collectively behaves, you know, and it stems from the very top. And if you've got a culture of the fans, just as you say, being basically a cash cow where you just milk them constantly, right? But you don't show them any respect, Brian. You don't engage with them. You don't take any of their considerations into account. Then it gets to the point where there's an us and them mentality, and it can't be like that for it to be successful. Now, because obviously of this morning, and I'm on the hoof driving, getting updates. Thankfully for me, Chris McElwain, aka Double Denim, he was wearing treble denim today. So what I asked him to do was to give me a breakdown so I could actually share this with anybody who has not been following this morning's events. And this, thank you to Chris, is how it all went down. So the board members arrived, promptly booed onto the stage. Imagine being booed on. I'm normally booed off, with red cards shown by a section of the room. So there's your first point. But as you say, Jim, suck it up. What are you expecting? Please do not at that point think, but we've qualified for the group stages in 19 out of 20 European competitions. Don't have that attitude. Remove that ego at that point, Jim. And that's the first point where they've gone wrong.
Diffuse the anger. Diffuse it. I think, like you've said, this is all pretty fresh. So there's lots to unpick with this. And you keep thinking about, they did that. And the point about the behave statement, words are very important, and how you use words are very important, and you have to watch you don't antagonise people. And obviously, Ross Desmond was trying to speak, so Peter Law takes it upon himself to say something to say, well, can we let the guy speak? Rather than say behave, because that's inflammatory straight away. And I think the sad thing about this morning is both sides are going to double down on this, and the gap that was there is going to widen, and it's going to be even more difficult to close that gap, I think. So are any of the sides going to hand out any kind of olive branch? I don't think they are. So I think this becomes worse, because I think a couple of things that come to mind, just thinking about this on the hoof here, is that I think we need some sort of internal review. So not an external review, some kind of consultation, some consultancy firm coming in and just reviewing the club from top to bottom in terms of not to there's poor governance. Well, that's poor. That should be addressed. The shareholder using the club's platform to put out a statement, that's clearly not a good thing to do. How you do this and the whole club, youth academy, the whole thing, a proper external consultancy review, and the club will implement whatever that says. And there's going to be things that they might find hard to swallow because they've been not as good as they should have been. But if it's a completely independent external consultants review and they implement these things, I think that would buy them a bit of goodwill from the fans. Another thing is they clearly need someone on the board who the fans can identify with, who's going to be the voice of the club. Now, I know people like Wally Hawkey's been talked about, and maybe Wally, maybe like a good guy to have one. Back in the day, Brian Dempsey was the guy that Fergus was annoying the hell out of people. And you thought, well, if they had Brian Dempsey on the board, he'd be the front man, and he would kind of diffuse a lot of the kind of stuff. And I think we need somebody to be the new face of Celtic who won't antagonise the fans, won't say behave yourself, won't say aren't we so good, and just treats. I was going to say treats the fans with a bit of respect. I think some of the stuff said this morning was a bit disrespectful to the fans, and I'm sure some of the fans were a bit disrespectful to the board today. So I think we need to try and close that gap. And my concern, as I said, I think the gap has widened today, and I think that can only be bad news for the club and good news for the rivals if we're in a state of disarray, because that can't help, and there's going and if the collective start to ramp things up, they've got a difficult balancing act as well, because they have to make sure they don't do anything that's going to not be seen to adversely affect the team. So I think there's a whole lot of things to unpick from this morning that will kind of come to mind over the next few hours. But that's kind of one of them. I think we need some sort of, as I say, some sort of external consultant review of the whole club, and they will implement the findings of that review. And we need somebody to be the new face of the club, the new chairman. Let the chief executive go on with his or her job. On you go, you do that. And the chairman says, I'm the face, give me your questions, I'll deal with everything. I know what's happening here.
Jim, I think you're right. My concern with that is you need a bit of self-reflection to
Yes.
allow that to happen, Brian. Now, as you said earlier on, I had the experience for a couple of hours of seeing the culture of these employees of Celtic Football Club, and what I seen did not make for good reading at all. And then today is yet another example. You then start looking at the nuance of language used. Does that mean you disrespect me as a football fan or as a shareholder of the football club? And you start asking these questions. Another thing I'm going to throw in there before I get back to Chris's list, Brian. It feels to me as though the Green Brigade were targeted in a big way, right? In relation to the ban, in relation to the police approach. I read a statement where, again, going into the language of it, there's no alleged assault. You're basically hung, drawn, and quartered. You've assaulted somebody. This kind of thing I find very, very dangerous because, as Jim says, there's a chasm there that it's almost an abyss. You're looking down it thinking there's no way we're ever going to get back to a point where there's that togetherness unless there is major change. Now, that major change isn't wiping out the fan base bit by bit. It's not divide and conquer. That's just going to be damaging, Brian. It doesn't matter how this individual or this group divides opinion. They're Celtic fans. These people are Celtic fans, Brian. And it's the life's blood of the club, the support. And I don't even know if the people we are talking about realise this. They're so far removed from the supporters, right, that they've forgotten that we'll be there when they're gone, Brian. We support the club. We don't support a board, And when things aren't going well, sometimes we even say, sack the manager or drop the left back. We support the football club. That's it. We want the best for Celtic. And if that means the board need to get wiped out, absolutely, make the changes. It's not the fans that need to get changed. That's never going to happen, Brian.
No, but that kind of goes back to my point about when I was talking about people's grandparents and great grandparents and that lineage. It really is more than a club with so many people. And I was sort of reflecting there, and I was thinking, right, see, we're talking about respect because people will say, well, maybe the people in attendance, the shareholders, were a wee bit disrespectful to the board and let them speak. See, if I was going into a situation, so say at my job, I'm going to get a proposal done, right? I need to think, what is the objections going to be and how do I deal with them? So I need to almost play the other part and go, right, if I'm them, what am I going to say, right? So see, today, if I'm in, they said, what am I their advisors or whatever, I'd have said, right, see, instead of putting a video of how great everything is, don't look over here, everything's brilliant. Why don't we just put up on display our findings for an internal review that say, over the past year, these are the failings that have been addressed. These are how we think they happened. This is the plan moving forward. And just leave it up on the screens for that first couple of minutes while people are coming in. Let the anger dissipate a bit and then go, we get it. We want to show you what we've been working on to show you that. And then if they're doing that and they're being respectful and they're saying, look, you asked for an explanation, there's the explanation. You've asked for this, yada, yada. And the people act badly or misbehave or cause disruption, then they can say, look, we tried our best here. We've tried to do everything. It's out of control. But they don't even have the forethought to do that. And that's where it becomes so frustrating when you watch, because you go, hey, this could have been, I don't think today would have salvaged much, right? But it'd been a good first step. It'd have been a right good start if you'd have got it right. But they simply didn't. And Jim asked you a question here, Paul, do you think it's incompetence or do you think it's intentional? I think it's a mix of both. Because clearly you can see the narrative being spun of the, what was the phrasing, please pick me up if I'm wrong, but was it the anti-establishment factions that are determined to drive division and toxicity around the football club? It's the fans you're talking about.
Yep.
That's the fans that light up the stadium. In a European night, that you're willing to say, look at us, look how great our stadium is, look how great our fans are, until they answer back, and then they have to behave. You can't do it. The two things can't be true. You have to have an acknowledgement and a bit of contrition. And it's incredibly maddening for me. And I just think that I was kind of hopeful. I thought what might happen today is Lowell will resign, make somebody else in. They'll acknowledge that it's been a problem. They'll ask for some time and they'll try and evidence it by getting Nancy in and and getting players in and finish the season strong. And then maybe over the summer have another good transfer window. People start to get a bit less angry. It could start to build for there. But to go in there and just burn the house down and say, basically, it's all your fault. Don't ask us any more questions. Shut it. What do you want? We know best. You're never going to get that. Like, you're never going to get the reaction you want. Even if you were right, by the way, even if they're 100% right, their approach was still wrong.
Yeah.
The more it
was a disaster.
The more you think of it, the more bonkers it is, Brian.
It's
I think, and I agree with you, because what you just described, I used to call that the other side of the desk view at work, whereby you've maybe there's going to be some restructuring happening at the work, and you've got 10 members of staff, and you're explaining to them what's going to happen next, and you think this is a great thing, but you have to think, well, what's the other side of the desk view about this? You have to anticipate what they're going to say, how it might not work out for somebody, because we're going to relocate from this part of Glasgow to that part of Glasgow. But what happens if they live miles away from there? It suits me, it doesn't suit. So to me, that's basic, and to have not done that just makes this even more bonkers than I first thought. And as I say, we're still unpicking all this stuff, but the more you think of it, you more think it's madness, absolute madness.
I'm going to share some of the language actually that was used today. You may have seen the video. If not, I'm sure it will be shared at some point today or over the weekend, thanks to Steve-O from the Celtic World Order. So get this, guys. I've just picked a couple of quotes out. This is verbatim. As Chris Mackay explained in the video, this is coming from Ross Desmond, the billionaire's son. Celtic must maintain, that's going to stick, Celtic must maintain strong reserves and contingencies to protect against unforeseen circumstances. I'm going to read this out, right? I'm going to read this out word for word rather than pick it apart, or I'll never get through it. That financial strength is what gives us independence, stability, and the ability to make our own decisions and not be beholden to anyone else. Those who talk about the club not having kicked on in Europe since 2003 ignore the enormous change in the financial landscape of football in that period. It has created a gap which keeps growing and challenges any club playing in a smaller European league. Most supporters understand that. Of course, clubs can still punch above their financial weight, and we should aspire to that. But if you swing and miss, you risk the very stability of the club, and that would be profoundly irresponsible. The financial independence of this club was jeopardised in the mid-1990s, and we must never allow ourselves to fall into that position again. PTSD, guys, we've spoke about this already. We constantly strive to improve, to become more competitive, and to go deeper in Europe. And there's no doubt we get things wrong and we make mistakes, and we try to learn from them. Our model is far from perfect, but for the most part, it has served this club well over the past 20 years. So we will not be bullied by aggressive or irrational factions. Wow, this is Celtic fans you're talking about. We will not be railroaded by those whose only vocation in life is to be anti-establishment. Who is he talking about? And by those who try to degrade the club. You're trying to tell us that Celtic fans are trying to degrade the club. Our focus is on what matters, improving this club step by step, systematically, without ever risking its future. Improving recruitment, investing in data analytics, upgrading facilities, enhancing the stadium, and trying to make Celtic stronger in every way. Jim Orr, what do you make of that?
Just before you come in, there's been a statement released from Celtic.
Another one. Oh, is it an AI one?
Aye, would you like me to read it? Just quickly.
Is this real? Is this real?
This is real, right? Regrettably, due to the continuing disruptive conduct of a small number of individuals preventing the orderly management of today's AGM, we were required to conclude the meeting earlier than we had planned. Such conduct is completely unacceptable and hugely disappointing. And while today's events are completely out with our control, clearly we regret the impact on our shareholders who were deprived of the opportunity to take part in an orderly and constructive meeting. Chairman Peter Law called a poll on the resolutions at the end of the meeting, the results of which will be made available once counted and verified by our registrar, Computershare. Should any shareholders wish to raise a question, they can do so by contacting our Investor Relations Department, and we will endeavour to respond to any queries. Wow.
Seriously, we're talking about the other day margins, and the margin for error, Jim, with this football club and particularly the board being zero. There is no margin for error. There's no margin for releasing another statement that's going to rile the fans. There's no margin for error in any meeting with the fan base. Yet, a few days later, we've got another statement and another meeting, and the errors have been made. But there is no margin for error.
My new T-shirt is "Read the Room." Read the room. Just after that statement that says "signed my dad," just kind of. I thought, well, again, this is really hard to unpick because it's almost like live. Stuff's happening.
Yeah.
And because I thought the statement tended to contradict itself. I thought you said at the start that something to do with this is really difficult. But most fans understand that. So why do you say that in the first place? You should have just started with. I should have just one or two sentences that we know a model. Whatever you said, we know we're not perfect, and we strive to do better. That's it. That's your statement. That's what you should have said. Because the fans know what's happening. The fans know the record in Europe is embarrassing. So don't even talk about that. Just kind of say, we know we've won a few trophies domestically. In Europe, we could be doing a wee bit better. We're always looking to strive for that. But we want to hear your questions. We want your input. That's why we're here today. You're the shareholders. We want your views, guys. Right? Take away the anger. All that did was just stoke more anger and more anger and more anger. And then you've got that statement that you just read out there, and you're thinking, again, that's just going to stoke. So they're actually taking a vote on who's on the board next year and all that kind of stuff. So game's a bogey. So
the game is a bogey. The game was over and the Rebels had won back in the 90s, Jim. But there's so much in that.
The game's a bogey and the Rebels have lost.
Listen, it's one of the ones, Jim, where we've spoken about all this, by the way. We've said, why do the board behave like this? Do they suffer some kind of PTSD from being scared to go bust? Is this what it is? Does it go back to 1994 and 2012? There's your answer. There's your answer right there. They are so risk averse to the point of holding us back. And that is a risk, by the way. If you're so risk averse and you don't take calculated risks, you won't progress. You're too comfortable. You're too comfortable.
I think they are risk averse, but I'll get back to something Brian talks about quite a lot of strategy. Right. And why do we have £77 million in the back? Because we lack a strategy there. Yeah. That if I think that money is there opportunistically, that we get the Jota money in and we get the Matt O'Reilly money in, and we don't know what to do with it. Basically, whereas if you had a strategy that says, see if we ever have this amount of money, build a museum, build a hotel, but we've got the money to do it. Whereas we're just sitting there thinking, we don't know what we're going to do with this money. But tell you what, we don't want to go bust. Even at £77 million in the bank. I think you made the point. There's only one English team who's got more money in the bank than we have. That's not risk averse. That's what you call that, Brian. Risk what?
I can't even think of a proper word. Do you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of, like, I'm not going to politicise things, but it reminds me when there's governments in the country and they sort of say there's like certain things they'll always go back to. So this Celtic board, they go back to, we look at other clubs who spent recklessly. We don't want to end up like them. Look at the trouble in the 90s. We don't want to end up like that. Yep. Look at these Green Brigade, they're bringing dishes put in their club. Look at the thing. There's certain things they always go back to because it's like the no manifesto, but it's like their media strategy in terms of how to dampen. So I mean, I don't think anyone's ever as boring as me and has watched Prime Minister questions. I'm a bit of a hate watcher, but when you watch it, it's always the same lines they drag out when they're getting questioned. You see it when any politician gets interviewed. They'll ask them a question. What about the state of the economy? And the line will be, well, I think you'll find we put 7 billion in, blah, blah, blah. And they go, but what about the homelessness? Well, I think you'll find we put 7 billion in. Celtic board are doing the same tactic. It's, well, what about the 90s? Well, what about the clubs that died because they didn't have money? Remember them? All that stuff. And but it's so poorly handled. There's no a bit of nuance or a bit of a cleverness that you can even go, I see what you did there, that's quick. It's so transparently lazy. And is that one of the things I said right at the start? I'm a bit ranty today, actually. It's not usually me on a Friday. I'm just a bit excited about this.
It's the red garment.
It's the red, mate.
Red mist.
But
I have passed the baton. On you go, son.
A bit at the start, you did much better, Jim. I wouldn't try and take that baton. But at the start, I said, see if they, with that 70 odd million, see if they said, look, this is the 5-year plan, right? This is the forecast. We're going to use that to improve the stadium facilities by getting the toilets done, getting the monitors put in the stadium for people to kind of see, getting QR codes on the phone so they can get right in, etc. Right? We're going to invest in the youth. What that might mean is our outgoings and players might suffer, but the best of facilities, the best of data in. But it might be short-term pain for long-term game, but that's the plan. You might not like that, but it's a plan. It's something. But it's like they prepare these statements but don't actually consider the reality. And that habit of putting every bit of cash into the club, we're not here to stockpile cash. 8 million in the bank. I don't know, we're not stockpiling it. What are you doing with it? Shut up though, we don't want to go bust. What?
You're right, that there's default responses. That you're talking about, like if you're talking to a politician, there's always a default response, and they don't say much. They talk a hell of a lot, Brian, but they don't tell you much. In relation to ambition, it would appear from that short part of Ross Desmond's statement there, it would appear to me that we have no European ambition, right? We're basically going back to what Bankier said when he was the chairman. It's too difficult. We're just there for the payday. We want the bounty, but it's too difficult. We can't compete. So what they're saying there is that last season, the one that we got a wee glimpse behind the curtain, that was an anomaly, guys. That's not going to happen again. Don't count your chickens. Rather than saying we want to be in that Champions League stage and we want to finish in the middle 5 seasons out of 7 or 7 seasons out of 10, Brian, instead of having that vision, they said, no. We can't, now and again, you might punch above your financial weight. That's what last season was, according to Ross Desmond. We punched above our financial weight last season. Absolute nonsense. And we speak to people who are in this level, no medium-sized organisations, that they're operating at large-sized organisations, and they're telling us, actually, no. We can strive for more. We talk about them. We interview them on Acsom. Go and check out on the YouTube channel. There's 1 or 2 little diversions that I'm going to jump into before we finish off with some comments from the viewers. There's over 7,000 watching. There's a lot of annoyance and amongst the Celtic supporters right now. Really, seriously, after that today, I'm going to go back to something Jim has said. If anything had been dampened a wee bit, Jim, it's just gone right back up to the very highest level of anger. Absolutely. It's blown up. Now, I'm going to bring this up not to be the big I am, but I want to thank every single person who tunes into a Celtic State of Mind. This here is a wee trophy that I picked up last night on the behalf of the Acsom team, and it's because we were inducted into the Hall of Fame at the Football Content Awards. Unbelievable achievement. All you need to do, there's only ever been 8 platforms who have been inducted in. This is proper star on the pavement material. If you look at the other platforms, you're talking millions of subscribers, big money investors, all this stuff. And we are punching above our financial weight, Brian, with awards like this. We're up there with guys like Arsenal Fans TV, the Anfield Wrap. Unbelievable. So thank you, every single person, for tuning in, watching what we do, supporting what we do. And we are going to continue to improve on that. We were down at Elland Road last night, and it is very England-centric, I've got to say, over the piece. We've been running Acsom for 8 years, right? We've made the finals of these awards 12 times. I'll wait for the third cough and then I'll give you a result. And in the 8 years and the 12 finalist nominations...
Where's the mute button? Okay,
we've brought home 8 awards. Unbelievable. Thank you, every single one of you. And when I picked this up, as well as thanking everybody who helps us out, I dedicated it to someone who became a friend of Acsom fairly recently. He joined us in Glasgow just a couple of months ago. It's the man, the legend, Gary Manny Mountfield, bass player extraordinaire with the Stone Roses and Primal Scream. One of the guys that anyone who met him didn't have a bad word to say about him. It is a tragedy and I'm not using the word lightly. It's a tragedy what has happened. Manny lost his wife Imelda 2 years ago. They've got twin boys, big Celtic fans, the two of them. They lost their mum when they were only 10. They're only 12, and they've now lost their dad. We were at a game. Kevin and I have a good laugh about this because it was so bizarre. We were at a game, Celtic versus Lazio, me, Kev Graham, and Andrew Innes at Primal Scream, who obviously Manny was the bass player with as well. And Andrew had been at the Celtic Superstore buying the twins a wee matching pair of Celtic strips. Absolutely, honestly, I couldn't believe the news as I drove into Leeds yesterday. Gutted, absolutely devastated. Thoughts with particularly the two wee boys, all his friends and family. Big Celtic fan, and not just one of the guys that just wanted to be a Celtic fan because it was cool. He knew the history of Celtic. He sat with Celtic fans a couple of months ago. A lot of the Acsom troops were there. Lloyd was there, Lawrence, Kev, everybody got a chance to speak to him. So absolutely gutted with that news. And as I say, thoughts and prayers with Manny's family and friends. Back to some of these comments coming in. We talk about death by 1,000 cuts. We talk about the perfect storm, Jim. Again, I'm now looking at this. If I was in charge, if I had any influence whatsoever, and I'd be saying, right, we need to get organised as a football club and we need to try and put this right. Are they capable of doing this, Jim? Are they capable of that type of thought after you've just heard the billionaire son's comments, the way that the club conducted themselves in front of fans and shareholders today? Is this football club's board capable of that contrition, the self-reflection, looking in the mirror and saying, this is out of control, we're not good enough to actually resolve it? Like you say, bring in a shadow board, bring in a consultancy, let's try and put this right. Are they capable of doing it, Jim?
Billionaire's boy sounds better than billionaire's son, just to make that pedantic comment. I think they'll double down. Both sides, I think, will double down on this. I think the statement's just come out. It's come out really quickly. And, you know, as you say in life, kind of do things in haste, paint at leisure. You know, I think it's a time for cool heads. They should maybe just kind of, how do we think about that rather than rush out a statement? Maybe they're meant to do that by the rules of the city or something. Maybe they have to, I don't know, respond to that. But I just think that statement is kind of doubling down some of the words again. The words are important. And again, we're still trying to, it's all kind of fresh. We're still trying to unpick these things. I think both sides are going to double down. I think the Celtic collective, I think they'll be really angry. Again, anger. Today's word, kids, is anger. I think they'll be really angry. I think the board are really angry. I think they're going to double down. I'm interested to see what happens next. I just hope it doesn't affect the team, because it's also the fact that, I mean, is that now 3 weeks without a manager? You know, again, when the statement came from Dermot Desmond, as I said last time I was on the podcast, that basically that hadn't just happened with the manager in the last 2 or 3 weeks. It must have been there for the last 2 months, 2 years for all we know. And the board sat back, let it happen. It's toxic. Oh, let's just let it happen. Let's not take responsibility. And I always think that you sort of know, and it's like maybe a life lesson thing, that I kind of always think that you know how good people are when they have to react in exceptional circumstances. Because for most people, life just goes along and it's kind of all right. But when you have a kind of something seismic happens, like when COVID happened, how did the government react to that? Badly. And that showed how badly they were. We've got £77 million in the bank. It's reactive. The point again that Brian makes about strategy. We had a strategy 5 years ago that said, see if we ever have X amount of money, this is the plan. This is what we'll do. You know, and I just think we are now in a kind of exceptional circumstance. There's a lot of anger about. I'm interested to see how they cope with that, because I also agree with Brian about, is it incompetence or is it intentional? I think it is a bit of both, unfortunately. And we shouldn't be having any incompetence, I think. If it was intentional, then that's a plan. Then that's a strategy. This will deal with this. But if it's incompetence, I'd be really concerned about what happens next.
Well, the thing with the £77.3 million in the bank, how do we utilise that? How do we use it? This isn't the way to get rid of it. Don't hemorrhage it because you have absolutely alienated your fan base. Don't underperform in the boardroom and on the park. That's not how to get rid of £77.3 million. And
no good business. Jump in. No good business is going to hoard cash, because if you know how to make money, you use money to make money.
Mhm.
That's how a business works. So how could they use that 77 million to generate even more money? They're
Exactly.
not, it's sitting in the bank. And to
Yep.
me, that's incompetent again. I get the point. If you want to keep 10 million, even that's too much. I think, okay, 10's fine. But what's your plan with the 77? You can't turn around and say, look what happened 30 years ago. That's not relevant.
You
and we
cannot,
know,
Jim.
the one thing we do know about the Celtic board is they do run a tight ship. And as a kind of former chartered accountant, that's good. That's what you want. You don't want to put yourself in the unnecessary risks. But if you get £77 million in the bank, my goodness, it's madness.
Yeah, and you know, going back to that statement, like you say, there's so much to unpick, Jim. We're going to be talking about this in the coming days. But going back to the European endeavours, again, basically saying since 2003, you're thinking, wow, seriously, that isn't good enough. 7 out of 9 getting knocked out of the qualification stages, right back to Maribor. That's not good enough, and no one at the club is willing to accept that. So listen, we could go on. There is actually 7,500 plus people watching the stream right now. We could certainly go on. We're going to call it a day for now, unless there's other statements that we need to speak about later on tonight. We do have a special on the AGM. It's going to be a wee bit later on the channel because I'm just away to Glasgow to film it now. Been on the road all day, actually, but we will have that out tonight. I'll be speaking to someone who was in the room and we'll be getting their reaction on the AGM. So tune into the channel. It normally goes out at 6:30, might be a wee bit later tonight, and we'll be back for the game. And at that point tomorrow night, we might even talk about the football. Thanks every single one of you for joining me on a Celtic State of Mind. And once again, Brian and Jim, top class. Join us again tomorrow, 30 minutes before kick-off on Acsom.